Hi guys, Rick Malava here for SimplyMaya.com, and in the forums, somebody named, or one of the users named Mick Ha, is trying to fiddle around with freezing transforms and setting a pivot rotation angles to, or the rotation vector to 0 of an object. And I think Maya's pivot system and world space and local space system can be quite confusing to people coming from packages where you can literally change the pivot rotation of an object and set that rotation to be 0, 0, 0. The way that objects in Maya work is their local axis of rotation is relative to the container which the object is within. For instance, let's create a polygon cube to try to explain or demonstrate what's going on here. So if I created a polygon cube, you see that, and I freeze its transforms, you see that its local pivot is oriented the same way as the container that the object is within. And in this case, this object is within world space, right? And when I froze its transforms, it matched the rotation of the container it's within. If I take this object and I rotate it, and now I freeze its transforms, I'm going to go to W mode so you can see its local pivot, right? When I freeze its transforms, its local pivot is going to rotate such that it matches the container that it's within, right? So its rotation goes to 0, 0, 0, and its local pivot will flip. Okay, I'm going to hit Z to undo that. To show that the local pivot of an object matches the rotation or the pivot of the object that it's contained within, let's create another cube. So I'll create another polygon cube. Okay, and I'll draw that out. Right, now you can see this is a new polygon cube, and I'll freeze its transforms, and you see that its local pivot is once again matching the pivot of the container that it's within, which is world space. Now let's take this object and shift select this object and hit the P key. That parents this object to this object, and its rotation values changed from 0, 0, 0 to 20 to these values right here. And what that is it's saying that this rotation of this axis relative to the axis or the pivot or the axis of the container that it is within, that's what these rotation values are relative to, right? So it's basically assuming that this is now 0, and this would be like world space or the global coordinates of this system now, because it's contained within this object. And so when I simply put this guy in here, its rotation values changed. Now remember what I said, if I freeze transforms on an object, its pivot will match the pivot or the world space axis of the container that the object is within. Think of the object that something is contained in is its world space. It's relative to what it's contained in. This object is contained in world space. This object is contained inside of this object. And this object's pivot now becomes this object's world space. To prove that, if I hit freeze transform, you see now this pivot changes to match this pivot, and its rotation values are now 0, 0, 0, which is what you were trying to do. But that's only true because 0, 0, 0 is relative to this object's rotation vector. If I take this object and I now pull it out of this object, it now becomes a child of world space, and this 0, 0, 0 is going to change to this rotation relative to world space. So if I take this guy and I unparent it by hitting the shift, or just by hitting the shift and the P key, now this object is no longer contained within cube 1, and you see its rotation values change to match this object's rotation values. Okay? So long story short, you can't have an object sitting in world space with an its axis rotated in such a way that its rotation vector is 0, 0, 0 relative to world space, right? And not be aligned with the axis within world space. The only way you can have the axis rotation values be 0, 0, 0 is if it's contained within another object that has its axis rotated, and 0, 0, 0 now becomes the rotation, the default rotation of the container that it's within. So anyway, that's kind of a clunky description of how Maya's coordinate system works, and I hope I didn't confuse you more than need be, but that's the only way you can get to where you want to go. So once again, if I freeze transforms, this guy's now 0, 0, 0, and it's matching the axis of the global axis, or the axis of the system of the containers within, which is world space. And if I take this object and I make it a child of this object by hitting the P key, and then I freeze its transforms, now its pivot matches the container that it's in, and that rotation becomes 0, 0, 0. So that's kind of the only way I know how to describe it. Someone might have a better way of doing it, but I hope this kind of gives you an idea of why you can't get to where I think you're trying to go.